Alright guys, so we started this new unit, so now we're going to do 4.2, graphs of equations. Just as a review, an ordered pair is a solution or a solution point of an equation in xy if the equation is true when A is substituted for x and B is substituted for y. The graph of an equation is a set of all points that are solutions of the equation, and the Cartesian plane is the two-dimensional grid that we use to plot ordered pairs and graph lines. It's divided into 4 quadrants. These 4 quadrants, there's going to be a question on the Hawks over this. So we start with quadrant 1 up here in the top right, and then we go counterclockwise, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4, put 3 down here, and 4 is in the bottom right. So it says sketch the graph of the equation. It should say y equals x squared minus 4, but x squared minus 4. So if I change this to what it actually should say, what they're doing is they're giving you an x, so you're just going to plug it in and solve it. So like for this first one, I would do negative 3 squared, and I would subtract 4. Well, it's going to be 9 minus 4, so your y value is 5. And you just keep going down the line, like negative 2 squared minus 4 would be 4 minus 4, which would be 0. Negative 1 squared minus 4 would be 1 minus 4, which is negative 3. 0 squared minus 4, which would be negative 4. And as you notice, this is a parabola. X squared, and we'll get into parent graphs eventually, is a parabola. So eventually your y is going to start repeating. So if I do 1 squared and I subtract 4, I get negative 3. And you kind of see that if I do 2 squared and then 3 squared, okay, you're going to end up getting the same values. So whenever you graph it, negative 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Negative 2 is 0. Negative 1 is negative 3. 0 is negative 4. And I repeat my values. So it looks something like that. Okay, the big thing here is that you can plug in the x value they give you to solve for y. And that's what we did to graph it. So the same way down here, okay, it says sketch the graph of the equation y equals x plus 1. Just plug it in and solve it. So that's going to be negative 3 plus 1, absolute value is negative 2, which should be 2. This one's a little bit easier because it kind of gives you the pattern. And you'll notice as I start to go on, after I plugged in my x values, that I should get something like this. So 2, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So negative 3, 2, negative 2, 1, negative 1, 0, 0, 1. We get all the way to 3, 4. If you notice this one, absolute value, if you remember, makes a V. Okay, so that's what this graph looks like. Big thing is, as long as you know you can plug it in to solve for it, then you can graph anything you need to. Okay, so I just plugged in negative 3 for the x to make a coordinate of negative 3, 2, so I could graph it. Same way here, I plugged in negative 2 to make a coordinate of negative 2, 1, so I could graph it. All right, these are points. That's how you're going to do it whenever you graph on the Hawks as well. So now, this is like what I would say is one of the harder questions on the Hawks. They're going to give you an equation, and they're going to give you a table, and they're going to say, hey, complete it. Well, this is saying x is 0, so I'm going to take the equation, and I'm going to plug in 0, and I'm going to solve it. So 0 equals y squared, so I replace the x with the 0. I would square root it, you were going to get 0. Okay? Same with square root of 8, but this time it's a y, so it's going to be x equals square root of 8 squared. And if you type that into your calculator, you should just get 8. I would do that. Same way, you just keep going. Now they're going to change it up to an x. I would square root it. I would get 4. Kind of seeing the pattern here, so try the last 3. Hopefully, if you pause the video and then watch it again, you should get 8 here. This one is going to become 72, and this one is going to become 5. I would say this is the hardest one because it's a negative squared roots of 5 squared. Well, negative times a negative is a positive, and square root of 5 times square root of 5 gives you 5. All right, they get a little bit harder. They'll give you something like this, full-on equation. Same thing though, we're just plugging it in. So this is saying that y is 0. So I would do 0 for the y. 3 times 0 gives me 0. So 6x equals 12. I'm going to divide by 6. X is 2. Same way with this next one. 6 times 0, because I give you the x this time, minus 3y equals 12. Negative 3y equals 12. Divide by negative 3. Y is negative 4. So you're just completing the table. All right, as you keep going, you kind of start to see more and more patterns. But the big thing is just know that you can plug it in and solve it. So 6 times 3 minus 3y equals 12. 18 minus 3y equals 12. Subtract 18. Negative 3y equals negative 6. Divided by negative 3. Y is 2. All right, as you solve, you eventually run into an issue though. So hopefully the next one you're going to see, you're going to get, let's see, negative 12. You should get 4. But in the next one, if I plug in 1 for y and I solve it, you end up getting a fraction. And don't forget, Hawks wants fractions. So I get 15 over 6. 3 goes into both of those, so it's going to be 5 over 2. That's what you're going to type in. If you get a fraction, doesn't mean you did it wrong. You just got to make sure it's simplified, okay? I can't do 15 over 6. I got to do 5 over 2 because that's a simplified version. If I plug in 2 for the y, this one you actually get a whole number. Okay, my x is 3. And these should match up because it's the same point. But I just wanted to show you that you could do it either way. Okay? So that's what I would say is probably one of the hardest parts on the Hawks is doing that. So find all the intercepts analytically of the graph of each equation. To find intercepts, right, you're going to plug in 0 for the opposite value. So if I wanted to find the y-intercept, I plug in 0 for x. If I wanted to find the x-intercept, I plug in 0 for y. So let's do the y-intercept first on this one. I'm going to plug in 0 for x and solve. So y equals 5 times 0 minus 4. Y equals negative 4. So your y-intercept is 0, comma, negative 4. X-intercept, I'm going to plug in 0 for y and solve. So 0 equals 5x minus 4. I'm going to add 4. 4 equals 5x. And I'm going to divide by 5. I get 4/5 equals x, aka 4/5 comma 0 is your x-intercept. You have to know how to find both and how to write it correctly. If I find the y-intercept right, I plugged in 0 for x. That's why 0 is my x. If I find the x-intercept, I plugged in 0 for the y. Okay? So same way here. Y-intercept, I'm going to plug in 0 for x. So it should be negative 4 again. If I do the x-intercept, plug in 0 for y. I add 4. Get 4 equals x squared. I would square root it. Don't forget when you square root it, it's plus or minus. Okay, so I had 2 x-intercepts on this one. I got 2, 0 and negative 2, 0. Bottom one, it's a standard form. So if I wanted to find the y-intercept, plug in 0 for x. You get negative 4 again. I don't know why they're all negative 4, but it's just the way it works. X-intercept, plug in 0 for the x, and I would solve. So negative 5y equals 20. Divide by negative 5. I plugged it in for the wrong one. Oop. Go back. Gotta plug in 0 for the y. There we go. So this would be 4x equals 20. Divided by 4. Your x-intercept is 5. So it should be 5, comma 0. Last one's a little bit harder. Absolute value. Alright, so if I did this, the first one, the y-intercept's not too bad. So I would say y equals negative 4, absolute value of 0 minus 5 plus 2. So y equals negative 4, absolute value of negative 5 plus 2. This one, the absolute value of negative 5 is 5, and then multiply by negative 4 to get negative 20. So my y-intercept is negative 18. Again, the y-intercept is pretty easy to solve for. It's the x-intercept that we get a little bit confusing on, because if I plug in 0 for y, well, it's like, how do you get rid of absolute value? So I'm going to subtract 2 here. Negative 2 equals negative 4, absolute value of x minus 5. Divide by negative 4. I get 1/2. Now don't forget, absolute value, you're going to write two equations to solve for your two x-intercepts, right? Because absolute value always has two answers. So first one, nothing changes. Second one, I make it a negative 1/2. So on both of them, I'm going to add 5, add 5. 5 is 10 over 2, so this becomes 11 over 2. This one becomes 9 over 2. And right, you would just type it into your calculator and make sure it worked out. If you need help understanding how to work your calculator, let me know. It's possible to have two x-intercepts, so just keep that in mind whenever we're graphing. But you really, really need to know how to find them because it's very important for whenever you do the Hawks assignment. Okay, especially the y-intercept and how to write it. That's like 0, whatever. So your assignment is going to be 2.1 Certify. If you guys have any questions over it, please let me know. I'm here to help. As you kind of noticed, it's a lot easier to get the certifies when they're done, when they're assigned, when it's fresh in your mind. That way, whenever it comes to the Hawks test, you don't have to make them all up. So 2.1 is your homework assignment. If you need help, again, let me know. Otherwise, good luck.